Hi everybody. Hey, how's it going? My name's Jay. I'm your host for this panel here. This is going to be brand building and script selling, featuring this individual right here. This is Miss Kasey Pierce. The first time I ever screw your name up, that's right.
Yeah, the first time ever.
Pierce. Kasey started as a writer back in the day, kind of more on a blog platform, short stories online, things like that. That developed into her first novella of short horror stories. It's called Pieces of Madness. Went into a reprint, in fact, I believe.
Yep, re-released next
It's a
month.
wonderful book with some really cool stories. Since then, Kasey has moved on to Source Point Press Publishing, which is an amazing press company just across the river there, over in Michigan. And there she does a comic called Nora. It's incredible. It's with artist Sean Seal. It's an amazing book. Kasey has been through the process, especially with a fine company like Source Point Press, to be able to talk a little bit about brand building and script selling. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll hand it over to Miss Kasey Pierce.
Thank you. But first off, let me start by saying that people have written books about this subject, the current scene in comics. People have spoken about it several times, and people will still keep talking about it and keep writing new books because it is changing all the time. There's certain rules of thumb that will stay the same about publishing and indie publishing, but it's constantly evolving for better or for worse, and we have to evolve with it. Now, I'm speaking as someone who is fresh enough on the scene, but I've been around just long enough to understand the current state of affairs when it comes to comic selling and indie publishing and the comic book scene. But I am by no means an expert. Anyone that says they are is a liar. So everything I'm about to say is everything that I found out and that I wish someone had told me. So now that that's been said, and even after Jason Clark did his wonderful introduction, people are still like, "Oh yeah, Kasey Pierce." Nah, it doesn't ring a bell, which is fine, But most of you are saying, "Well, I still don't know who you are or why you're hosting this panel." Well, let me just say that I'm also the girl in a short span of 3 years has been published by one of the top 10 indie publishers in the nation. And I've toured with them throughout the Midwest and East Coast of the United States, promoting my baby, Nora, that I wrote with no formal English education and no experience writing fiction in a shitty one-bedroom apartment. And in that short time span, that same publisher has just become a multimedia production company, as some of our titles have been sold as a film slate to Shoreline Entertainment. My colleague David Hayes writes a horror graphic novel called Rotten Tail, and that just wrapped up filming in Phoenix, and is now slated for release for the Sci-Fi Channel. And that same story I wrote that night during a snowstorm. After I told myself I would never write fiction, Nora is a part of that film slate. And I'm very honored to say that. And lastly, I'm the girl who can sell 100 copies of a single issue comic on a Saturday, while most of my peers are struggling to sell 3. And that is why I'm here. I want to help because it's hard. There's a lot to contend with these days. You're either next to the wall of Prince guy, or you're buried in Funkos and mystery boxes. And Big Bang Theory, always the best and worst thing to ever happen to Comic-Con. Because you will get those people that have the right to be this way, to come and kind of gawk and just walk the floor. They don't want to be sold. They just want to see the nerds that they saw on the TV. And that's cool. And with them comes a new challenge. And you either rise to it or just get out of comics, because it's not going to change. It's always going to be something else. Big Bang Theory will go off the air. In 10 years, there's going to be another show in the exact same vein. When Funkos die off, there'll be more stuff to take its place. So it'll always be something. Tell me another one. But the long and short of it is, no one is going to come up to your table and say, "Gee, this comic book I've never heard of sure does look interesting. I like to purchase it." And anyone who says that's happened, I want NASA rover footage of this happening because I want to know what planet you were on, because it just doesn't. And people can purchase comics at their local comic shop. They can buy graphic novels on Amazon, download a few issues on Comixology. So why would they be in the market for a comic at a Comic-Con? Well, we have to remember the original reason before the market became saturated with Comic-Cons and before they exploded. The original reason was for the creator meeting experience. And some of you might say, well, I knew that. Well, we forget. I forget all the time. That's really why they would even consider purchasing a comic book at a Comic-Con. Or they're long box divers looking for vintages, and I get that. But you're not here just to sell your work anymore. Get that out of your head. Because the product is not just the book, it's your brand. And that's really what I want to highlight today. That's what they should get with their purchase for free. Because that will make that person, that's the difference between them being a customer and them being a follower. You don't need customers, you need followers. That's how small empires are built, one follower at a time. So what is the brand? Well, your brand is the product version of you. Let me elaborate. There's 1 million people out there in line for this job, to be a creator, let alone a known creator. So what makes you so different? Well, I could sell 300 comics in a weekend, making money hand over fist at lightning speed, and I will never move from this level that I'm at now. I wouldn't even be here talking to you. I could just do mindless sales like that, or I could sell 50 in a day and get to know that person as a reader so I can grow as a writer. And now I have 50 followers. You don't need hundreds of people buying your work. You need the right people to follow you, no matter how many people that might be. And the audience isn't going to find you anymore. That's just not how it works. You have to get out there and find them. And like I said, 1 million people are online for the same thing you are. And how can they tell you apart? And it's one follower at a time. And when it comes to the brand and how you represent yourself, no matter what, be genuine. And when I say be genuine, well, you should always amplify yourself a little bit. I mean, this is sales after all. But I could be tired and exhausted at the end of a Saturday, just kind of over it. And I'm not going to be so genuine as to be like, yeah, I got some shit that I wrote, 2 for $6. I'll sign it for you. You know, no. But you don't have to be Mr. Lights, Camera, Action either. You know, gimmicky. But it's okay to have a niche to stand out. For example, Dirk Manning. Dirk Manning is a horror author who has this niche of hiding his face in every picture he takes. He sort of looks ominous and nobody sees his face in pictures and so forth. But it became a trademark. He's not using it to sell, he's using it to make an imprint on your mind. That image to be synonymous with. So that's the difference between a trademark and a gimmick. It's part of his brand, but he's also a very personable person as well, and that's what people remember about Dirk. And that's the thing, when people walk away, they should remember you. You know, not even just by looking at your comic, they should remember that encounter. And he's very personable, and even though, like, there's tons of people walking by, there goes a sale, there goes a sale, there goes a sale, those were all customers. This person right in front of you is a follower or potential follower. But there's a line too. There's a lot of people that can be booth barnacles because they actually talked to me for 10 minutes. You know, there's boundaries. You know, you met a creator, it kind of stops and ends there. Excuse me. So, I myself built my brand on being the personable glam girl who writes about biological warfare, women that skin their husbands, and I send children to hell. I'm full of surprises. But I'm also the one who posts on social media about weight training and you know, the power of positivity. You know, just all dimensions of me as a person, and that's what makes up my brand. But it's 100% me at the same time. But like I said, you're not obligated to let people in. Trust me, some of these people do not know boundaries, especially on the internet. You know, they'll try to add you on your personal page instead of your comic page. Some people slip under the radar. And like I said, the line is, hey, you met a creator, that does not make us BFFs. You know, but anyway, you can still give them a taste of who you are. and try to make it relatable during sales. Like, for example, what's your name?
Ricky.
What is it?
Ricky.
Ricky. Okay. So, Ricky, do you like science fiction? What kind of sci-fi do you normally like?
I don't know, like action sci-fi.
Action sci-fi? Okay, so more fancy, like Star Wars. Yeah, I like that kind of stuff too. Do you like anything darker, like Stranger Things or X-Files?
Yeah, Stranger Things really good.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like, I ate that up in a week. Boom, right there. Under a minute. We met on a certain level. That's what I mean by being personable. So make it about them, because we're creators and we talk about ourselves all day long. I've been doing it this entire panel. So with that, that's how the brand ties in with marketing, and how marketing ties in with social media. But love it or hate it, social media, use it. Hardly anyone updates their websites anymore. That's just not the way of the world, and you guys know that. But this tool can be your worst enemy, and it only takes one post to damage your brand. And once you've built that brand, you can damage it by alienating your audience, by posting anything negative, vague booking. Absolutely hate that. Or talking about politics. And I know that we're also all very passionate people, and you're like, well, it's my personal page. I should be able to say what the hell you want. No, don't give me that shit. Grow up. You know, you built a brand. You want to put yourself out there. This is the game. So watch what you post. But either that, or just find another outlet for your opinions, or being so opinionated. If that's your thing, you know, make that so in your work. That way your followers are already on the same level. You know, I always said, if you want to express yourself, write a book. Case in point. So, also, when it comes to marketing, this is a very visual age. How many writers do we have in here? Become good at any form of graphic design that you can. It doesn't have to be Photoshop, but you know, as simple as an app. You know, adding music to little videos or photos, because that's all people do is just scroll through their phones all day long, and they just see seconds of videos or seconds of photos. They're not sitting there and reading anymore. So it's important to get engaged that way, and only do maybe strong 2 posts, you know, a day. That's fine, unless you're in a Kickstarter. Down to the wire, release the hounds. You know, I mean, I know it gets aggressive and people get annoyed, but whatever. Anyways, so now that we've got marketing and branding covered, we need to get you published first. Unless you're self-publishing, of course. So again, we had 3 writers. How many artists are in here? Okay, you're dabbling in it? Gotcha. Okay. So I'm looking at a room full of sensitive souls whose egos bruise very easily, because mine does, and you're a creator, and that's just the way it goes. This is why the most important thing to remember when it comes to your work is to not be so precious, and it's hard. You are going to get your heart broken. As creators, we all see our work as our baby, but we must understand that our work will not be perceived 100% of the time the way it was intended to be perceived. And if you get critiqued hard, 9 times out of 10, it wasn't just because you were not that publisher's cup of tea. You need work. It's not a big deal. And that's something I had to learn, though, because I have a very big ego. When I had to sign over half of my NORA rights in order to become part of that Shoreline Entertainment film slate, it was like watching a montage of someone that was just diagnosed with cancer. It was like watching the sunset. You know, I had the contract, I didn't even sign it yet, really thinking about it. Do I really want to sign over these rights? You know, we always treat our babies as our opuses, but if these were all the grand finales, then what's the point? But yeah, the growing is a painful process, and you know, growing pains don't stop for the creator, and they shouldn't. Be open to what editors and publishers have to say about your work, because they are shaping your voice. They're carving it out. And you can be flexible without sacrificing artistic integrity. I had a character that I wrote that our editor-in-chief, Travis, perceived totally different than how I intended to write him. I just wanted him to be a regular guy, a model husband who just happened to be a scientist. Well, Travis saw a glimpse of a guy who was trying to use his knowledge and experiments to become drunk with power. And I fought against his critiques immediately. Well, that's just not the way I wrote him. So there, and you're trying to change it. You're trying to change my story. But when I went with the tide, it worked out because he actually added more dimension to the plot. And critiques are not attacks at all, so stop. But most importantly, about selling a script, when you're pitching a script, please do not tell them the plot. Because then you're just going on and on and on, and the presentation is going to sound like a 5-year-old telling his mom what happened in a movie. Like, oh, and there's this guy, and he jumps out of a plane, and he's got a bomb strapped to him, and it was all like boom, and the guy on the ground was all like, whoa! You're gonna lose him. Act like you have 5 minutes. Just like reading the back of a book blurb. 3 or 4 sentences that hook you in, that gives them the chance to say, I want to learn more because I might potentially throw down money for this. It all comes down to, why should I invest in you? Well, I'll pitch Nora to you right now. I'm sorry, that's all I have to really go on right now. But Nora Seeshelm is a coma fisher for hire. She has the ability to delve into your mind's eye and retrieve you from or help you cross over during a coma. And she obtained that ability while working in pathogenic development for the CIA, creating hellish viruses for means of biological warfare. That was 3 sentences. Did it creep you out? Because it should. But, things, and it's hard to talk about your work. It's hard to sum it up because you're in the thick of it. Yes, ma'am?
What did you do before you wrote, like for a job?
Oh, massage therapy.
Really?
Yep.
Totally different. That's awesome.
Yeah, like I said, what I'm trying to say is there's nothing special about me. It's all about tactics. And I've spent a lot of my early 20s living for other people. I always say I majored in practicality 101 because I sacrificed my dreams, and writing was always something I wanted to do, so I just kind of came back to it. But I'll get to more of that later. But yeah, massage therapy. I'm just a regular Joe. But also, have it done. Have a product. If ideas paid, we'd all be millionaires. Every 30 seconds, somebody comes up with a great idea, or 5 seconds. They want to invest in the work ethic, not the story. So at least have a whole script done, or at least half of the art. And my favorite thing is when people come up to you and they say, well, I have this idea, but I don't want to tell you about it because, I don't want you to steal it. Wait a second. You have an idea that's so good that I'm going to want to steal it. That's never been done before. That I can't right now probably name 5 movies or 4 books that it's in the same vein of. Well, here, let me get you a pen and, I'll sign that check. No, that just doesn't happen. So that's part of your brand too, is your reputation for your work ethic. That's the first thing that publishers will be like, well, I want to invest in you because you can get something done, and then we'll worry about the story later. So always remember that. But yeah, and this is a small world of comics, and a reputation gets around quick. And if you can't get work done, if you're slow, then everyone's going to know about it. So protect your brand in that regard too. You don't want to become the fluff guy, the idea man. So yeah, it's summed up. Have something done. Don't walk up empty-handed. And that speaks volumes about brand, about who you are and the brand and what they're investing in. And think of it that way. This is what you're buying. So, also when it comes to your work, be honest with yourself. Is it marketable? Is the story you have hot right now? Is it too hot? Is it oversaturated? Is the story about zombies? Well, then probably. But zombies with a twist. Okay. But do your homework too. Don't blindly submit a gore piece in the same vein as Clive Barker to Christian book press. You know, because it's insulting to publishers if you don't do your homework on them as well. Like, why did you, well, what makes you want to come work for SourcePoint? Or, you know, Joe Schmo Press? Or, you know, what made you want to come to us? I just really need this published. Well, then you look desperate. That means that you already got a bunch of no's and you just told them that. So, don't show your cards. But yeah, and you'll never get anything back from those people after you made that impression. Not an email, phone call, nothing. So yeah, I'm actually like rocking through this like a lot faster than I thought I would.
That's okay.
But
I have a question for you.
yes, sir.
You recently did Toronto Comic Con.
Yes.
And you're kind of, you know, dipping your toes into the Canadian waters. And something I've noticed traveling from con to con across the border is there is a bit of a distinct style between how Canadians sell in their artist alley compared to the Americans. And you guys do have a much more personable approach, a much more, you know, hands-on technique, like you're saying. Like, you go to a Canadian Comic-Con, everybody, a lot of people, they're just sitting kind of behind their table, they're drawing, not a lot of engagement. You see a SourcePoint Press table at a show, and it's probably got 3 or 4 creators out front in the aisle, shaking your hand, kissing your baby, whatever.
Right.
Right? Do you notice that? Is that part of the reason why you think SourcePoint is doing so well? That you guys are, you know, you really, really work hard for it. You're not
Yes.
just at a table expecting the book to sell itself.
Right. And that's not a distinction between Americans and Canadians. I see it at every show.
Yeah.
Internationally. Yeah, that they just expect people to, you know, like I said, walk up to their table. But the reason SourcePoint does so well, you know, some people will call it the hard sell. And I mean, it really isn't. If you say no, which people will say no a lot, and it's going to hurt. But it's about the fact that there's no stars here. We all lift each other up, because if this company makes it, I make it. So I'm not out for myself. I'm out, you know, promoting my work, obviously, but you know, I'll bend over for SourcePoint. You know, I'll do whatever it takes, and that's the way it should be. You know, don't just take. You know, this is a very scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of company, and we all lift each other up and try to cross promote, because we all want the same thing. We want SourcePoint to succeed, because that means we succeed.
Right.
So we rise together, you know. we
How do you
rise.
find the balance between confidence enough in your work that it's good and what you've created, and finding the humility of having to work with editors? When you go to a company, like, odds are you got a script, it ain't going to be produced word for word how you did your draft, right?
Right.
Right. So how do you find that balance of, okay, I want to protect this, it's my baby, like you say, but I'm going to have to give in to some things to get this out there, to get it created?
Right. There's a line, and you're just gonna have to use your intuition.
Yeah.
If you're changing, like if you're tweaking characters, if you're saying, well, you know what, I think you should represent it this way or that way. If they start changing like key plot points, okay, then you're trying to change the entire story. You've crossed the line. Maybe we shouldn't do business because this just isn't your story.
Right.
You know. But that's another thing too, which I'm glad you said that. Try to find a publisher with a specific scope. You know, nobody that just, you know, we publish everything from capes to pulp to no. If you're a horror sci-fi author, look for horror and sci-fi. If you do, you know, superhero stuff, look for somebody that's known for that, because those are the people that are probably selling the most, because they're more concentrated. If that makes any sense.
Oh, totally.
So. But yeah, if they're changing key plot points, I'd say, well, it's just not their story. It's just not for them.
Right on. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody curious? Mike?
Earlier you said you didn't have any formal English education, right? Like English literature education.
Right.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, like, do you think that, because like storytelling is hard. I found from doing my own stuff that it's very easy to be confusing. It's easy to miss your own point, right? So do you think you have a skill, or were you ever told you had a skill naturally for storytelling?
Yeah, I've been told that, but a lot of what your initial style will be for storytelling is just at reading. You will always find that you write in a similar voice to this person or that person, Robert Heinlein, Bradbury, whoever that might be. And that way too, you could also use that in your sales and just say, this is the Clive Barker meets Twilight Zone. That's Pieces of Madness. It's a gore piece. Storytelling is hard, but I learned so much from the editing process. It's unreal. It's unreal because the extent of my English education starts and ends at Schoolhouse Rock. I mean, really. And I remember my editor in the beginning, she sent me now I'm not trying to berate you, but there are certain habits that you have. I think it was like a repetitive choreography. I tried to hold the reader's hand through every single sentence and let them know everything that was going on. And I said, no, this is free education. And I'm going to take it. But, there are all times where I can be a Brad and be like, well, you just don't get it. No, it's just, but then I'll come back and go, you're right, let's try it this way, But as it just comes with time, and try multiple editors too. Don't just stick with one. Leah Lederman, who also edits for Dirk Manning, she really helped shape my voice. And then you're working with Travis, and the way he perceives things gave me two means of perception to just keep growing and growing and growing. And you'll see that even in Pieces of Madness with the two news stories, there's this progression from, sort of, not, I won't say primitive, but I'll say that for lack of wit right now, primitive to, wow, you became really complex and ballsy too. So, but yeah, it's hard to tell a story. It is, and staying within the confines of grammar, But it's like playing the piano. You just keep practicing. That's all it is. And keep reading. Don't ever stop reading.
Yeah, very important. Do you have a question? Yeah.
When you're writing a manuscript, how many edits should the script or story go through before you finally decide to take it to a publisher?
Good question.
As many as it takes until you know it's done.
Like how many drafts did you do of issue 1 of Nora?
That's a good question. Probably about 2 edits. About that, because you can't sit there and keep nitpicking. Because it don't pander either. That's a big habit that I think we all fall into. Is that we're like, well, we think about the reader reading it and like, well, they're gonna think this and they're gonna think that. The reader knows when it's manufactured and when you're pandering to them. So don't fall into that and write absolute garbage. Write something that you think nobody will ever see and only your eyes will see. Everything that you wanted to say, and you go back and you clean it up, you got a story that's truly genuine and truly you. So I always say that is a great way to eliminate writer's block too. So I did want to touch lastly on something that I've been asked a lot about, and I don't take it lightly. Sexism. I don't throw that word around either, because I feel like it's a buzzword. Oh, that's sexist. Let's think about this. But I've said this a million times. I'm not a man. I'm not a woman. I'm a writer. In this playing field, that's just it. And I never, I don't think I've ever had an encounter with sexism that I'm aware of up until recently. It's something that you can't really put into words, but you can feel it. I'll have a gentleman that smiles smugly and, flips through my comic book and, oh, that's okay, you read a comic, and I'll tell them the plot. They'll just kind of nod when I, begin telling them, biological warfare, yada yada, so on and so forth, and they'll just be like, you wrote this? They'll question me again. Yeah, I just said that. They'd say it like 3 times. And I've told myself the first few times that I was reading into it, but you have to remember that intention is everything. So don't get angry. Just take the satisfaction of wildly exceeding their expectations every single time. And that's how we're going to eliminate sexism. And they don't mean you any harm. They just don't. And guys, I understand that this goes both ways too. There's always a prejudice. and just keep pushing and keep leaving them dumbfounded, and that's how we're going to eliminate the stigma, is one follower at a time. And also, it's evident that I dress a certain way. I'm comfortable like this, and
You're owning it.
exactly.
Right?
If
You're
someone,
not necessarily using
and
it,
if right,
yeah, you're just
exactly.
being you. Yeah.
If someone finds this aesthetically pleasing, then I'm flattered. And feminism is about rights. And I'm blessed to say that I was born and brought up in a civilized culture where a woman's words can be published, admired, and respected, and where I can showcase my hard work at the gym while I'm selling it. That's great. So, but yeah, I just want to address that. Always think about the intention. These people mean you no harm. Sometimes it's just a natural reaction, and that's how we're going to eliminate this sexist stigma, is by shutting them down every time.
Kasey Pierce is out there in Artist Alley. She's got books. You should go get them. You should go read them. They are very, very, very good.
Thank you, Jason.
I've watched you go from, Pieces of Madness. If you read it, it's excellent stories. But you can, once you realize that she's written a comic book, she's very descriptive, very visually descriptive. And it was almost just a no-brainer that you would move into comics, even though that wasn't expected. You were just a writer.
I didn't want to do comics ever.
That's another thing about writing. It's going to evolve to end up, you may not even know what medium you end up in that
Right.
may suit you best until you explore this process and go through it. So go meet Kasey. Kasey is more than happy to talk to you at her table, and get in touch with her. Like she said, she's all over social media. Would you like to tell the fine people where they can find you on the social media?
Yes, you can find me at cosmickasey.com, both with K's, at Cosmic Kasey on Twitter, facebook.com/cosmickasey, or Instagram is at KCD Writes, not as in women's lib, but as in physical writing. And I have a card out there too, with all that on it.
Please go visit Kasey. Go chat with her. She's wonderful.
Yeah, come talk to me.
Miss Kasey Pierce, thank you all very much.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Great.